Matthew chapter 2, verse 13 through 15. Pay careful attention to the italic, bold words at the end. And when they departed, here's our story. Behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Verse 14. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. Verse 15. Pay careful attention now.
Careful attention.
And was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Out of Egypt have I called my son. If you had a Christian study Bible, there would be a footnote there. And it would tell you that this passage, in fact, can be found in the book of Hosea, chapter 11. This passage, in fact, in the Jewish scriptures. Mm-hmm. You should know that this verse, in fact, this passage quoted...
Yes, he is quoting the KJV, by the way, for those in the chat room. Yes, he is quoting all of Tovia's... Tovia constantly goes to the KJV. I think that's because that's probably what was quoted to him when he was growing up.
Matthew does appear in the book of Hosea and Sefer Hosea. It's there. But for some reason, Matthew does something that's striking. He only quotes a very small part of the original passage that appears in Sefer Hosea in the book of Hosea. And the question is why? Ordinarily, if you quote a verse, you quote it in its entirety. Why would you quote only one segment of the original passage? The answer to that question is simple. Matthew, meaning whoever wrote it, had no choice. He had to quote only the last segment of the original passage, because had Matthew quoted the passage, the verse from Hosea in its entirety, it would become immediately obvious to the reader of the Christian Bible that this verse in no way is referring to the Messiah, but is referring to something else entirely different.
Okay, let's actually go to Hosea real quick. Hosea 11. Yes.
There's so many. First of all, there's different things to say about this comment. One is, whenever Scripture is quoted in a small fragment, in my view, it is to evoke the larger context. For example, when Paul says, "Who has believed our report?" Right? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He's not just saying that verse. He's talking all about Isaiah 52, 53.
Or when he shoes on the cross. And he's going to bring... Well, yeah, okay. So when he shoes on the cross.
My point is this. However, if we want to take him at his the way he's using weights and measures, and then look at the Mishnah and rabbinic texts that take little things from the Scripture completely out of context, one of them is that it would absolutely destroy the foundation of his religion, because the Mishnah and the Talmud very much take scriptures, makes them mean something different. One of them is don't follow a majority to do evil. And it says, they just say you need to follow the majority. In other words, they lop the context off and then build off it. There's all sorts of things like that. But that's not what Matthew's doing here anyway. But if we wanted to, my point is, if we wanted to use Singer's method on his own tradition, on the framework of if he's indeed Orthodox, now I don't know if he's Orthodox or not, he might think that the Mishnah and the Talmud are Jewish cultural expressions, just like Michael Stepakov thinks they are for his world. So I haven't seen any. I did look around on his website, but I didn't see anything in Singer's website that talked about his perspective on halakha or anything like that. So, but my point is, he needs to be really careful how he approaches these things, because if we take the same exact approach to the Mishnah and the Talmud, it would absolutely fall apart underneath him. But that's not what Matthew's doing. Matthew is not just trying to twist Scripture. there's a lot of parallel that is supposed to be evoked. The fact that we see in Matthew chapter 1 itself, the genealogy of Yeshua, it mentions, all the women. It mentions Rahab, mentions Ruth, or Tamar, right? Rahab, Ruth. It mentions Uriah, the Hittite, right? Wife, husband of Bathsheba, and so on. Matthew's very, very knowledgeable of Jewish tradition. When I say Jewish, I don't mean Talmud. I mean, he understands the Judaic, Davidic dynasty and all the stories thereof. So for him to quote Hosea 11, it's not like he's thinking, oh, I'm going to get this one by people. That's not his thought at all.
I'm going to pull one over on those guys.
But rather, he's evoking these larger themes, one of which is that in a way, Herod and the people that are allied with him in Jerusalem are slaughtering innocent young boys in the same way that Pharaoh was slaughtering innocent young boys. It's like the leadership of Israel has essentially become like Egypt. And the Messiah as a youth is hidden from that terror and that murderous rampage that Herod goes on. Messiah is taken away from that and hidden from that for a time and then brought back. And it's also, we're supposed to think of Israel being delivered from Egypt as a whole, because Messiah, there are many affinities between Messiah. He is the representative of his people. So these resonances are supposed to come to mind when we see this.
Well, and what Tovia is okay. So Tovia is saying that Matthew isn't quoting the entire passage. So the whole verse says, "When Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son." So what Tovia is now arguing is that no, of course this is not talking about the Messiah. This is talking about Israel, right? Okay. So I'm sorry. Did I cut you off, Rob?
No, that's fine. It is. I think it is talking about Israel. It's talking about Israel coming out of Egypt, but it's also we're supposed to. Matthew wants us to see Yeshua as embodying the traits of the people as a whole.
Well, this is a quote from my father. This is in his commentary on the book of Matthew, volume 1, page 62. He says, "Thus, the quote in Matthew's story is given to parallel the Exodus event as the demonstration of God's covenant faithfulness to Israel, which resulted in her redemption, with the coming of Yeshua as his Messiah, who would effect eternal redemption." Boom.